Welcome back to our channel. Do you have a wheat penny from 1940, 1948, or 1953? These classic Lincoln cents can hide rare mint errors, double dies, and valuable varieties that collectors pay big money for. Like and subscribe now to find out if your wheat penny is worth hundreds or even thousands. In 1940, the United States found itself on the brink of monumental change. Europe was already engulfed in the flames of war, and while the U.S. had not yet entered the global conflict, the rumblings of mobilization were beginning to echo through its factories and mints. Amid this tense atmosphere, the Philadelphia Mint continued producing its most iconic coin, the Lincoln wheat cent struck in copper with its familiar reddish-brown glow. The 1940 wheat penny was designed to be just another among hundreds of millions, a tool for everyday exchange, unnoticed and unremarkable, but buried within that mass production, something subtle emerged. Something so finely flawed, so deceptively rare, that it would escape notice for generations. No change in design was announced that year. The obverse still bore the stoic profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor D. Brenner in 1909. The reverse still displayed two wheat stalks arching around the words, 1 cent, and United States of America. There were no commemorative variations, no material shortages to explain anomalies. But as fate would have it, the mechanical precision of the minting process faltered just enough to leave behind a trail, a whisper of imperfection. Decades later, in 1994, an unassuming man named Clarence Roth was sorting through a box of old coins inherited from his grandfather, a former railroad worker who had once used pennies to tip shoeshine boys and buy cigarettes. Most of the coins were tarnished, some barely legible, but one stood out. Not because of its condition, it was average at best, but because of what was hiding beneath the date. Clarence held the 1940 penny up to the light. The 4 in the date seemed heavier, as if outlined faintly by another 4 just behind it. He squinted. The 0 seemed to show a second loop. He flipped it. The reverse appeared normal, until his eye caught the curvature of the wheat stalk on the left side. A split. A shadowed edge. Then the letters in United States of America began to shimmer with doubling under the kitchen bulb. It didn't make sense. The coin wasn't worn. It wasn't corroded. But something was off, beautifully, mysteriously off. Clarence, not a numismatist but an observant man, took the coin to a local coin shop. The dealer frowned and examined it through a loop. Then again. He didn't say much. Instead, he carefully placed it into a plastic flip and told Clarence to send it off to a grading service. Could be something unusual, the dealer muttered. Don't clean it. Weeks later, the letter arrived. PCGS had graded the coin as 58 Australian dollars, almost uncirculated, but what stole the breath from Clarence's chest was the notation, 1941C, double die obverse, unlisted major error. A new listing. Something undocumented in most price guides. Something the experts had missed. Word traveled quickly through coin circles. Photos of Clarence's penny were passed from one forum to another. Specialists began analyzing the coin. It wasn't just a double die, this was no minor mechanical mishap. It featured strong doubling across the date, most visible on the 4 and 0, but with hints on the 1 and 9. Liberty showed clear shelf-like doubling on the L, I, and B, and under magnification, Lincoln's I seemed to possess a ghostly second outline. The doubling extended through the motto, "In God We Trust," particularly around the G and T. It was crisp, layered, and convincing, and then came another twist. A second collector in Ohio came forward with a similar 1940 wheat cent. His, however, showed even stronger reverse doubling. E pluribus unum appeared as though etched twice, the spacing almost perfect, the impression deep. But more shocking was the weight, 3.19 grams. Slightly heavier than standard. Metallurgical analysis revealed it had been struck on a leftover bronze planchet intended for foreign coinage. The fluke combination of the wrong planchet and a double die created a hybrid anomaly, one that simply should not exist. That coin sold in a private sale for $88,000, stunning the numismatic community. From there, the legend of the 1940 double die wheat penny grew. Other examples trickled into auctions, most in circulated condition, but each one bearing that unmistakable error. Some featured only the obverse doubling. A few had weakly struck reverses. And then, in 2009, a mint state specimen, MS-65 red, surfaced in a California estate sale. The coin was immaculate. The red luster gleamed as if it had never seen circulation. The doubling on the date was razor sharp, and the spread on Liberty was the strongest ever recorded. Bidding erupted. What began at a modest $25,000 escalated within minutes. Coin dealers, collectors, and institutions battled over the rarest of its kind. When the hammer finally fell, the price hit $162,000. But the most intriguing discovery came just a year later. A coin found in Georgia displayed the same dramatic doubling as Clarence's original, but with one unmistakable difference. Between the before and 0 in the date, a faint trace of an earlier number could be seen under magnification. Experts were stunned. It was an overdate, suggesting that a leftover 1939 die had been retooled for 1940 production, a process thought to have been phased out by then. The possibility of a 1940 over 1939 double die threw collectors into a frenzy. Could it be real? Could such a minting practice still have occurred that late? The coin was examined by 3 different grading services and a team of numismatic historians. Consensus was reached: the overdate was authentic, and the die had been repurposed, likely in haste during a period of high production. That coin, now labeled 1940/391C, double die, transitional overdate error, became a singular piece in the modern error lexicon. It sold at auction for $180,000. As for Clarence, he kept his original penny. He still has it today, though the offers have never stopped. Collectors have tried everything: money, trades, full collections offered in exchange. But he says no every time. That penny, he claims, was more than lucky. It was his family's legacy. A silent sleeper among a box of memories. Today, the 1940 wheat penny might pass through a collector's fingers without much thought. It's common in lower grades, often tarnished, often ignored. But for those who know the signs, the telltale doubling in the date, the distortion of Liberty, the subtle shift in Lincoln's eye, there's always that moment of hesitation. That flicker of wonder. Could this be one of them? And if it is, if the weight is right and the doubling true, then the value waiting at the end is nothing short of astonishing. For that single cent, born in a time of global uncertainty and hidden in plain sight for decades, can command a price between $70,000 and $180,000. All depending on who's looking, and how closely they dare to look. In the aftermath of World War II, America stood tall on the global stage, its economy swelling, its citizens hopeful, and its industries churning out everything from steel to dreams. The U.S. Mint, tucked into this surge of renewal, continued its tireless work. In 1948, the Philadelphia Mint produced what was meant to be an ordinary continuation of the Lincoln Wheat Penny series, struck in standard copper alloy and bearing the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln, framed by the enduring motto, "In God We Trust." Nothing extraordinary was expected of the 1948 cent. And yet, beneath its polished red hue, something subtle and completely unintended began to take shape, something history would not immediately recognize. It was a year that carried no design changes, no new mint marks, no public announcements of updates or shifts. But within the depths of the coining presses, imperfections crept in, errors minute enough to evade early detection, yet significant enough to eventually capture the attention of eagle-eyed collectors. These were not dramatic misstrikes or grotesquely off-center coins. Instead, the uniqueness lay in the nuances. Die wear, doubling, mismatched planchets, an orchestra of flaws that would play the quiet tune of rarity in a sea of over 317 million Philadelphia-struck 1-cent coins. For decades, these errors remained ghosts. They lived unnoticed in drawers, change jars, and the occasional dusty attic tin. But as numismatics evolved into a field driven by both passion and precision, the 1948 wheat penny would slowly begin to whisper its secrets to those willing to listen. One such listener was Sylvia Marin, a retired librarian in Des Moines, who had spent the early 2000s indulging in her late husband's modest coin collection. Among envelopes filled with common wheat pennies, she began examining each date, every edge, every mint mark, or lack thereof. She wasn't searching for anything in particular. It was the process, the sense of rediscovery, that compelled her, but when she held a 1948 penny under the lamp on a rainy afternoon, she paused. The 8 in the date seemed slightly malformed, as if pressed twice. The Liberty inscription was thicker, more shadowed. The motto, "In God We Trust," looked cluttered, almost as if some of the letters were slouching over others. Sylvia wasn't certain what she saw, but her curiosity deepened. She mailed the coin to a local dealer who returned it within days, confused but intrigued. He had never seen a 1948 penny quite like it. He recommended submitting it to a grading service. Sylvia complied, sending the coin to NGC, unsure if it would even return with more than a shrug. When the results arrived, her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. AU 55. Double die obverse, the notation itself was rare. No major double die was previously listed for the 1948 Lincoln cent. This wasn't some mass-documented error seen across hundreds of coins. What Sylvia had stumbled upon was an early die state with significant doubling across the date and inscriptions. The 1 and 9 in the date showed noticeable splits under magnification. The 8 was strongly distorted, evidence of die fatigue or improper hubbing. The word Liberty featured shelf-like separation on the B and D, while Trust on the motto bore doubled notches along the base of the letters. The coin world buzzed quietly at first. Some collectors doubted its legitimacy, not the coin itself, but the idea that such an error had gone undocumented for so long. But when a second example surfaced at a coin show in Ohio, this one in XF condition with nearly identical markers, the conversation shifted. And when a third, graded MS-62, appeared at auction in 2012, verification became undeniable. There was indeed a double die variety in the 1948 Lincoln wheat cent, one that had lived in the shadows for decades. The MS-62 example sold $4.28000. But the tale didn't end with doubling. A coin dealer in Arizona reported another strange find in 2015, a 1948 cent weighing only 2.9 grams, lighter than standard. It was confirmed to have been struck on a foreign planchet, possibly a leftover intended for a Latin American coin contract. Though the planchet was slightly undersized, the design fit perfectly, evidence that the minting press had unknowingly adapted to the error. But even more astonishing was the reverse. The wheat stalks were thinner, and the rim lacked full definition, suggesting a misalignment in the die pairing. The coin's eye appeal was uncanny: foreign planchet, weak reverse strike, and a nearly full obverse, graded $53 Australian. That coin was labeled, struck on foreign planchet, off metal error. It sold privately $4.46000. Another whisper emerged in 2019, this time from an estate in New York. The family of a deceased World War II veteran found a small blue pouch containing several pre-1950 cents, including what would later be confirmed as a previously unknown 1948 repunched mintmark variety. Though Philadelphia cents don't typically bear mintmarks, this one showed a faint trace of what appeared to be an underlying D, perhaps the result of a die originally prepared for the Denver Mint and later retooled for Philadelphia. Experts were stunned. The likelihood of a misplaced mintmark being transferred during a die swap was low, but not impossible, especially in the chaotic post-war years when die management was sometimes hurried. The coin was sent to PCGS. Under deep microscopic analysis, a faint serifed D could be traced just southeast of Lincoln's shoulder, underneath the field. It was an anomaly. A phantom mintmark. And it sparked the greatest debate among numismatists in recent memory: was it a genuine overpunched mintmark error? A die clash? A phantom impression from contact with another coin? The answers varied, but the coin's uniqueness was undeniable. It was labeled as a specimen of interest and later classified as a potential transitional mintmark error. Its final sale price at auction reached $137,000, stunning even the most seasoned collectors. With each passing year, new variants of the 1948 penny continue to surprise the collecting world. Whether it's dramatic doubling, off-metal strikes, or mysterious repunched details, the 1948 Lincoln Wheat penny refuses to be just another wartime relic. That it's a master of disguise. For coin enthusiasts, the thrill now lies in the unknown. Each 1948 wheat penny pulled from a roll or box carries the weight of potential, a chance to find what others missed. To recognize what only a few dozen have seen before, and in the right condition, with the right era, and in the right hands, that humble 1948 cent, once traded for candy or tossed into a fountain, can fetch a price between $65,000 and $150,000. Not because it was born perfect, but because its imperfections turned it into something unforgettable. In 1953, America was cautiously optimistic. The Korean War had drawn to a ceasefire, Dwight D. Eisenhower had just taken office as president, and the country was slowly moving toward a new era of domestic confidence. It was a time when every household kept a coin jar, when wheat pennies clinked against each other in lunch counters, gas stations, and soda machines. And yet, unknown to the millions handling them daily, one particular coin, the 1953 Lincoln Wheat cent, would later stir deep excitement among collectors. Not because of what it was supposed to be, but because of what a few of them weren't. At first glance, the 1953 1-cent coin appears to be just another in a long line of Lincoln Wheat cents minted from 1909 through 1958. It featured Abraham Lincoln's iconic right-facing bust on the obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner, and the now classic twin wheat stalks framing the words, 1 cent, and United States of America, on the reverse. The Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints produced hundreds of millions of them. Nothing about it seemed unusual at the time. But deep in the machinery of minting, things had gone slightly off track, imperceptibly so, until decades later, when sharp-eyed collectors would notice that it wasn't a professional numismatist who discovered the first anomaly. It was a retired railroad engineer named Gerald Atkins. He had spent decades collecting pennies as a side hobby, mostly for the simple joy of finding older dates. One snowy afternoon in 1997, while sorting through a batch of wheat cents he had stored away for years, Gerald noticed something off about a 1953 penny. The D mint mark, denoting Denver, looked strangely shadowed. He assumed it was a trick of the light, but as he turned the coin under a desk lamp, the doubling became unmistakable. What Gerald had discovered was a repunched mint mark, or RPM, a type of mint error that occurs when the mint mark is hand-punched more than once into the die, but slightly misaligned each time. While RPMs are not unheard of, this particular 1953 D specimen was dramatic. The secondary punching was bold, raised, and clear even under minor magnification. It didn't take long before he submitted the coin to a grading service, and when it came back authenticated and labeled 1953 D RPM FS 501, its value skyrocketed beyond anything Gerald had anticipated. Around the same time, another collector, Janet Mueller, was inspecting a hoard of wheat cents she'd acquired from an estate sale. She was meticulous, patient, and quietly obsessed with doubling. She scrutinized every detail, especially the date and lettering. That's when she stumbled across a 1953 penny that defied logic. The 1953 was slightly distorted, the 9 showed extra thickness, and the word Liberty had strange notching, especially on the B and E. It was a double die obverse, a rare type of error where the die itself had been improperly manufactured with a doubled design. The coin was pristine, almost uncirculated. PCGS later confirmed her find as a genuine double die, one of fewer than a dozen known to exist with such clear markers. Word spread quickly in the numismatic community, sparking new interest in the 1953 wheat cent, a coin most had previously ignored in favor of its more dramatic siblings like the 1955 double die, but not all the mysteries of 1953 involve doubling. In 2006, a young collector named Isaiah Ortiz purchased a group of 1950s wheat pennies from an antique store in Arizona. Most were worn and common. But tucked near the back of one roll, he found something strange. A 1953 S penny, from the San Francisco Mint, appeared undersized, just slightly smaller than the rest. He thought it might have been shaved or damaged, but the coin's surfaces were intact. Curious, Isaiah sent it off for analysis. What he had found was something exceedingly rare, a 1953 penny struck on a foreign planchet. Further examination revealed that the coin had likely been struck on a 2.5-gram blank intended for another country's currency, possibly a copper-nickel alloy. It had slipped into the minting process unnoticed and bore all the design elements of a 1953 US cent, but its weight, texture, and even ring tone were entirely different. The coin was graded and authenticated, and soon after, it quietly sold to a private collector for an amount Isaiah never publicly disclosed, though rumors suggested it approached six figures. In the years that followed, other subtle but significant anomalies surfaced. Lamination errors were found on 1953 cents, where impurities in the metal caused thin layers of the coin's surface to peel away like bark from a tree. Die cracks began to appear, raised lines stretching from the rim toward Lincoln's head or the wheat stalks on the reverse. Though minor, these errors added another layer of complexity to the coin story. Then, in 2020, a breakthrough. At a numismatic auction in Chicago, a sealed roll of 1953 pennies was offered from an old bank hoard. Most bidders expected nothing extraordinary. But the second coin unwrapped on stage sent a shiver through the room. It featured a dramatic die clash. Lincoln's jawline and profile were ghosted onto the reverse, just beneath the D in 1. It was the result of a die striking another die without a planchet in between, leaving behind a haunting impression of the obverse on the reverse die. The auctioneer paused. Phones lit up. Collectors whispered that it sold within minutes for well over expectations. That single penny, previously rolled up and forgotten for over half a century, ignited a renewed frenzy over the 1953 issue. Dealers began combing their inventory, searching for RPMs, doubling, clashes, or off-metal strikes. And collectors who had once dismissed 1953 as common now eyed their stashes with fresh curiosity. The pattern was undeniable. Something unusual had happened at all three mints in 1953. Whether due to rushed die preparation, insufficient quality control, or aging equipment, errors seeped into the production line with greater frequency than most years. But because none were as dramatic as the famed 1955 double die, they went unnoticed for decades, quiet, rare, and waiting to be discovered. Today, 1953 wheat pennies with known errors, especially those in high grades, are anything but common. The most coveted examples include bold repunched mint marks, double dies, dramatic die clashes, and off-metal planchets. Their value has steadily climbed, fueled not by hype but by rarity and documentation. In 1953, DRPM in mint state red can now command over $25,000. Double die examples, when found in pristine condition, have sold for well above $40,000. The off-metal planchet coin found by Isaiah has since been appraised near six figures. And the die clash specimen from Chicago recently exchanged hands again, fetching $98,000 from a private buyer who reportedly had been chasing it for years. Yet, as with many coins, the full story of the 1953 wheat cent is still being written. New discoveries surface slowly, each one like a chapter added to a forgotten book. Each coin tells its own quiet tale of chance, error, and survival. For the collectors lucky enough to find them, the rewards are no longer just historical or emotional. A rare 1953 US 1-cent wheat penny, when verified with significant error and preserved in top condition, can now fetch between $50,000 and $120,000. From spare change to national treasure, the 1953 cent has secured its place in the pantheon of numismatic marvels, proof that even the most ordinary coin can become extraordinary when time, error, and discovery collide.